It was one of those afternoons when everything feels too normal to go wrong. I was in a hotel room 3 hours away, halfway through a quarterly review meeting that had already stretched into its third hour. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, the sound of a colleague's voice droning through slides about projected numbers and cost analysis. My phone buzzed once, then again. I glanced at it under the table, subtly. "Mom," the screen read. I frowned. It wasn't like her to call twice in a row. She hated being a bother, always said she didn't want to interrupt anything important. I silenced it. I'd call her back after the meeting. But then a third buzz, then a fourth. This time it wasn't a call. It was an emergency alert. "Tornado warning, seek shelter immediately. Area, Jefferson County." I felt the blood drain from my face. My heart started pounding. Jefferson County. That's where Mom lived. I looked at the other faces around the conference table. Calm, detached, no one else seemed affected. It wasn't happening here, it was happening there. I stood up, didn't excuse myself. I just walked out, letting the door swing closed behind me. In the hallway, I called her. It rang once, twice. She answered. "Hello?" Her voice was thin, barely audible, shaky. "Is it really coming here?" she asked. I didn't know what to say. I opened a browser on my phone and searched the live radar. A red blob. A huge red swirl crawling straight across the screen, barreling toward her small town like a beast. "Mom, listen to me," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Go to the hallway, right now. Take your phone, take a blanket if you can. Stay away from the windows." She hesitated. "Should I bring the cat?" "Yes, if you can, yes." I was already moving, down the hall, down the stairs, past the front desk. "I'm coming," I told her, though I knew I couldn't make it in time. I would never make it in time. The call dropped. I stopped walking. My hand was still holding the phone to my ear, even though there was no one there. Just silence. No static, no busy tone. Just gone. I redialed. Straight to voicemail. I stood on the sidewalk, heart racing. People passed me, chatting, smiling, carrying coffee cups. Nobody else knew. Nobody else had a mother sitting alone in a house built in 1957, probably with nothing more than an old folding door separating her from an EF4. I tried again. Still voicemail. There was this moment, I don't know how long it lasted, where I felt like everything around me just slowed down. My thoughts turned on me. Why didn't you pick up the first time she called? Why weren't you there like you promised? Why did you say you'd stop by after the meeting, like she could just wait until you were done talking about spreadsheets? I remember standing there paralyzed. Then something inside me kicked in, maybe fear, maybe instinct. I opened the rideshare app. I didn't even know where I was going yet, but I had to move. I booked a car to the rental agency 2 blocks away, called them on the way, told them I needed something fast. I didn't care about the price, just something fast. On the ride over, I kept refreshing the weather radar. The red mass was closer now, swirling tighter. The live updates on Twitter were terrifying. Photos of funnel clouds, downed power lines, cars flipped over, people screaming in all caps. Then someone posted, "Tornado just touched down outside Clayville. Huge, violent." That was her town. That was where she was. I tried calling again. Voicemail. The drive to the rental place felt like it took a year. I was shaking by the time I signed the paperwork, trying to hold the pen still. When I finally got on the road, my hands gripped the wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. And then, I don't know why I remember this detail so clearly, but as I merged onto the highway, a song came on the radio. "Yesterday" by the Beatles. Why she had to go, I don't know. She wouldn't say. It felt like some cruel joke. I turned it off. I didn't want music. I wanted noise, sirens, voices, anything but a memory playing back what I might have lost. I didn't know what I would find when I got there. I didn't know if the house would still be there. I didn't know if she would still be there. But I knew I would never forgive myself if she wasn't, and I had ignored the call. I keep replaying the morning of the storm in my head, over and over, as if I can rewind the clock just far enough to change one single choice. One decision that would have made all the difference. The truth is, she wasn't supposed to be alone that day. She wasn't supposed to wake up in that quiet house, listening to the wind shifting just slightly louder than usual, glancing out the curtains and seeing the clouds begin to churn. She wasn't supposed to face any of that by herself, because I was supposed to be there. The original plan was simple. I'd drive over early, grab breakfast on the way like I usually did, that blueberry muffin she liked, and maybe some orange juice. We were going to spend the morning sorting through old photo albums she'd pulled out of the attic. She had mentioned wanting to digitize them before they yellowed completely, said it was her new project, as if it would keep her young to relive all those birthdays and baptisms and long-forgotten vacations. I told her I'd be there by 10, but then something happened, something that always happens. A last-minute meeting, an important one. "You don't have to cancel with your mom," my assistant had said. "We'll understand." But I didn't. I shifted things around, justified it by telling myself I'd still see her later, just after work. I called her around 8 that morning to explain. "Mom, I'm still coming," I said. "Just not right away. I'll swing by after my meeting, maybe stay a little longer in the afternoon. We'll still do the photos, I promise." There was a pause on the other end of the line. Not disappointment exactly, just a soft sigh. "It's okay, sweetheart. I'll be here." And that was it. That was the moment I left her alone. It wasn't until much later, after the storm had passed, after the emergency crews came and went, after the headlines and interviews and all the chaos quieted down, that I found out how she spent those hours. She had made tea, set out the photo boxes anyway, carefully laying them out on the table in the order she wanted to show me. She even found a few Polaroids I hadn't seen in years. One of me, in a Batman costume. One of my father holding me on his shoulders before he got sick, before he disappeared from our lives into a blur of hospital gowns and unspoken grief. She had everything ready for me. That's what broke me the most when I saw the living room later. The table still set up, photos half blown across the carpet, one stuck to the ceiling fan. She had believed I'd come. She trusted my word, and I left her to face hell alone. I think people underestimate how much damage guilt can do. Not just the kind you feel, but the kind that rewrites how you see the entire day. I kept asking myself, what if I hadn't rescheduled? What if I had shown up like I said I would? Would I have taken her somewhere safer? Would I have noticed the alert sooner? Would she have been less scared? Or would I have just sat there with her, two sitting ducks with no basement, no real shelter, nothing but thin walls and prayer? Part of me thinks she knew the storm was coming, not just because of the weather alerts, but something deeper, some old-world instinct, the kind mothers carry even when they pretend they don't. She had left the hallway light on. She had lined up bottled water near the bathroom. She'd even called the neighbor the night before, asking if he'd be around in case of something strange, but no one was there. The neighbor had gone into town that morning. Her son, the one person who swore he'd be there, chose a meeting over a muffin and memories. I'm not proud of that. It's strange the way time slows in hindsight. The decision felt small at the moment. It always does. One more hour, one more call, one more meeting. We always assume there will be more time, but storms don't wait. She wasn't supposed to be alone that day. And yet there she was, this fragile, stubborn woman standing between four walls, holding a phone that would eventually go dead, while outside, the sky folded in on itself. I keep that memory close now, not as punishment, but as a warning. Plans are paper thin, promises are glass. And sometimes you only realize the weight of your absence after the winds have already come to take everything away. I've seen thunderstorms before, plenty of them. Midwestern summers practically train you for them. The flickering sky, the sudden wind, the smell of ozone that hits you just before the rain begins. But this, what happened that afternoon, wasn't a storm. It was something else, something alive. Later, after everything had settled, my mother described it like this. It felt like the house took a deep breath and held it. That image haunts me. I didn't get to see what she saw in that moment. I wasn't there, standing barefoot in the hallway with the lights flickering and the world falling apart around her. But in the days that followed, I pieced it together. From her voice, the way it cracked when she spoke. From what the neighbors said, what the emergency scanner picked up, and what the footage from a gas station camera 3 blocks away captured as the tornado bore down on her street. It started, she told me, with a color change. The sky dimmed, but not like sunset. This was different. It turned a thick, muddy green, unnatural, almost sickly. She stood at the window and watched as the clouds shifted direction. It looked like they were fighting each other, she said, swirling in opposite patterns, as if the heavens had decided to break their own rules. And then, the silence. Not the peaceful kind, but the kind that presses in around you, like the world is holding its breath. She took her cat, Pepper, and stepped into the narrow hallway that cuts through the center of the house. That's where she decided to wait. She brought a blanket, her phone, a flashlight that barely worked, and her hearing aid, which she had almost forgotten in the bathroom. She sat down, cradled the cat in her lap, and listened. What came next wasn't the sound of rain. It was a freight train. Not metaphorical, actual roaring, low, grinding thunder that seemed to come from beneath the floorboards. And then the walls began to move, just slightly at first, then pulsing as if the whole house had lungs and had begun to inhale. She was breathing, my mother whispered when she told me. The house was breathing. The wooden frame groaned. Paint cracked in thin, snaking lines along the ceiling. Doors slammed on their own. Windows began to tremble in their frames. The front room's glass shattered first, blown inward like a bomb had gone off outside. Shards flew across the room, slicing through the air and embedding into the couch, the walls, the far kitchen counter. She didn't scream, not because she wasn't terrified, she was, but she said there was no room for sound. Her voice caught in her chest. All she could do was hold on to Pepper and pray she had made herself small enough for the hallway to protect her. Outside, trees snapped. She had a birch in the front yard that had been there since I was a child. I used to climb it, used to throw tennis balls at it just to see them bounce back. That birch cracked in half and speared the side of the house, punching a hole through the front bedroom like it was cardboard. The wind came in next, not a gust, but a suction. It pulled, dragged, as though the air itself wanted to reach inside and take everything away. Photo frames were ripped from the walls. A lamp was sucked into the bathroom. The door to the linen closet blew open, and everything inside, sheets, towels, even a bag of mothballs, disappeared. The phone in her hand lost signal, but the screen stayed lit so she could still see my name. Calling, she said, again and again. It never connected. And I, 3 hours away, was pressing redial on a phone that rang only once before cutting out. At the center of it all, she stayed curled in the hallway, eyes shut, counting seconds the way she used to count contractions when she gave birth to me. One breath, one prayer, one more moment alive. And then it stopped. The noise faded, the pressure released. The house exhaled. A strange, otherworldly stillness took over, the kind that makes you wonder if you're alive or dreaming. The silence didn't comfort her. It scared her more than the storm, because after something that violent, quiet doesn't feel like safety. It feels like the eye of the storm, like a trick. She didn't move, not at first. She waited until she could hear something real, sirens, dogs barking, the sound of distant yelling. Then, and only then, did she open her eyes. The hallway had protected her, somehow. A hallway and a cat. The rest of the house was broken, but she was still there. She told me later that the moment she stood up, her legs shook so badly she had to lean against the wall. The floor was littered with glass. The air smelled of rain and wood and something chemical, gasoline maybe, or leaking insulation. She walked slowly toward the kitchen, every step like a miracle, unsure what she'd find on the other side of each corner. And the craziest part? The tea she made that morning was still sitting on the counter, cold, untouched in her favorite mug, the one with the faded words, "Best mom ever." That image stays with me, that quiet defiance, that ordinary cup in the middle of catastrophe. When the call finally reconnected, I didn't recognize the sound of her voice. For a few terrifying seconds, I wasn't even sure it was her. There was static, distant cracking, then a gasp, one shallow breath, then silence again. I held the phone tighter against my ear, trying to push my voice into the gap between us. Mum, can you hear me? More static, then something like a cough, muffled, weak. Mum, say something, anything. A pause, then just barely audible. I'm here. I exhaled so hard it hurt. My hands were shaking on the wheel. The road stretched endlessly in front of me, but my focus was only on that faint voice. Those two simple words that pulled me back from the edge of panic. She was alive. That was all I needed to know. But she wasn't okay. I can't get up, she said. Her voice was fragile, like it was being carried across miles of broken wire. I tried to move. I don't know if I fell. I swallowed hard, knuckles white against the steering wheel. I was already pushing the speed limit, flying past exit signs and half-lit gas stations. Rain pelted the windshield like nails, but I didn't care. I would have driven through fire if I had to. What room are you in? I asked. The hallway. Still, it's dark. Is the door blocked? I don't know. Something's on it, maybe. I can't push it open. Okay, I said, trying to stay calm, trying to keep my voice steady. You're safe for now, Mom. Just stay on the phone with me. Keep talking. She started to cry then. Not sobbing, just soft, helpless tears, the kind that break your heart because they don't ask for anything. I wanted to reach through the phone. I wanted to hold her, to lift the wreckage myself, to erase the distance between us with a single breath. I heard the roof, she whispered. I think it came off. I heard it go. I didn't know what to say. What could I say? I'd spent a lifetime pretending I could protect her, but at that moment, I was just a voice on the other end of a cracked phone line, driving faster than logic allowed, praying that metal and rubber and road could somehow outpace a storm that had already come and gone. I kept her talking. I asked her about the cat. Pepper's okay, she said. She ran when the glass broke, but she came back. She's here with me now. That helped me breathe. I needed details. Proof that there was still something familiar in that house, even if everything else had been destroyed. Every few minutes the signal would drop, then reconnect. Each time it cut out, I thought that was it, that I'd lost her, that those last words would echo forever. But she always came back. One word, one breath. That's all it took. I was still over an hour away when she said, "There's water coming in." From the roof. I think so, or maybe the pipes broke. It smells strange. That terrified me more than anything. I knew that if the gas lines were ruptured, if there was flooding, she could be in real danger. Still, even after surviving the tornado, I told her not to move. Just stay put. Don't try to find the leak. Help is coming. I promise you. They're on the way. I had already called 911 3 times. Each time I gave them the address. Each time they told me there were dozens of houses affected, power lines down, emergency teams stretched thin. She's elderly, I told them. She's trapped. I need someone there now. The dispatcher said they would do what they could. That wasn't enough, so I called the neighbor, Alan, again. He finally answered. His voice was panicked, out of breath. I've been checking houses, he said. I'm 3 blocks down. I'll get to her. Please, I said. Just call me when you see her. I didn't hang up on my mother, though. I stayed on the line, kept her talking, asked her to tell me a story, any story. She started telling me about when I was 5 and got caught trying to make pancakes by myself. You dumped a whole bag of flour into the sink, she said with a shaky laugh. Said it needed to be washed first. We both laughed. It was the first moment of real light in all that darkness, and I held onto it like a life raft. I hear something, she said then. Outside, I think someone's coming. My heart stopped. Alan, I asked, do you see anyone? She didn't answer. I heard footsteps on broken glass, a voice calling her name, and then the phone fell. Just a loud clatter and the line went silent. I screamed her name into the receiver, and then, blessedly, I heard Alan's voice. I've got her. She's okay. She's shaken, but she's okay. I pulled over. I couldn't drive anymore. My hands were too numb. I cried right there on the shoulder of Highway 77 with the rain still falling outside and the steering wheel pressed against my forehead. She was alive, she was out, and somehow, against all odds, a voice on the other end of the line had been enough to carry her through. By the time I reached her street, the winds had calmed, but the world I stepped into looked like a place I had never seen before. It wasn't her neighborhood. It was a graveyard made of splinters and shingles. Trees that once shaded the sidewalks were stripped bare, their limbs twisted like arms frozen mid-prayer. Cars lay flipped like forgotten toys. Street signs bent at impossible angles. The smell hit me first. Wet earth, splintered pine, and the metallic tang of rain on exposed wiring. It was sharp, unnatural, like a wound left open too long. I pulled the car into what was left of her driveway, though the concrete had been covered in debris. Her mailbox, which used to be shaped like a small red barn, was gone, snapped off at the base. I stepped out into a silence that buzzed. No birds, no voices, just a low hum from distant sirens and the soft squish of mud under my shoes. I stood there, staring at the house, or what was left of it. The roof had been torn away like paper. The living room wall was gone, completely missing. It gave me a strange view inside, like looking into a dollhouse someone had smashed in anger. The coffee table we used to sit around every Sunday was in pieces. The couch had a branch driven through it like a spear. The curtains fluttered where the windows had been. I couldn't move at first. My brain couldn't catch up to what my eyes were seeing. I had known she survived. Alan had called me back. She was safe, being checked by paramedics a few blocks away. But nothing prepares you for the sight of a place that held your whole childhood lying broken at your feet. Then I noticed the hallway, still intact, somehow untouched. It was like the tornado had roared through every room, tearing memories off the walls, but paused right at the threshold of the narrow hall where she had taken cover. I walked inside slowly, the floor crunching beneath me. The air was thick with insulation dust, tiny floating particles that sparkled in the fading light like snow. There, against the inside wall, were the two things that had saved her, the battered blanket and a shivering ball of fur. Pepper, the cat, looked up at me and meowed weakly. I crouched down and scooped her up. She buried her head into my arm, shaking. I didn't know cats could cry until that moment. I stood in that hallway and felt something strange, something close to reverence. The space was barely 5 feet wide, 10 feet long, but it had held firm. It had protected her. Maybe it was luck. Maybe the structure was just strong enough. Maybe it was something else. I didn't ask questions. I just stood there, whispering thank you to a patch of drywall and 2x4s. Then I began to look around the rest of the house, if only to understand what she had endured. The kitchen window had blown out completely. Pots and pans were scattered across the floor. A photo of my father, the one she always kept near the sink, lay face down in a puddle, its frame cracked. I picked it up and wiped it dry. He was smiling in the photo, standing beside a little boy holding a fishing pole. Me. I found the tea mug still upright on the counter, half filled with rainwater, and on the dining table, where she had laid out the photo albums, a single page was still stuck open. A baby picture of me in black and white, cradled in her arms at the hospital. The caption in her handwriting read, "He came into the world crying and beautiful." I broke down, right there. Fell to my knees, holding that page, tears falling too fast to wipe away. The storm had taken almost everything, but not that. Outside, neighbors wandered like survivors of a war. Some had blood on their shirts. Others carried flashlights, cell phones, water bottles. A man passed by carrying a golden retriever, wrapped in a blanket like a child. He nodded at me. I nodded back. There were no words. When I finally made it to the emergency shelter where they had taken her, I found her sitting in a metal folding chair, wrapped in an emergency blanket, a nurse at her side, a half-drunk bottle of water on her lap. Her hair was matted, her hands were shaking, but her eyes were alive. When she saw me, she didn't cry. She smiled. "You came," she whispered. "I'm sorry," I said, voice breaking. "I should have been there." She shook her head. "You were. You stayed with me, on the phone. I heard you." I knelt beside her and hugged her so tight I thought I'd break her, but she didn't break. She'd already been tested by something far more powerful than me, and she had won. That day, the news crews came. They called it a miracle. "Elderly woman survives direct hit," the headline said. But it wasn't a miracle. It was strength, her strength, and maybe, just maybe, a hallway built in 1957 that remembered how to hold her up when the rest of the world fell down. It took weeks to fully process what had happened. The insurance adjusters came, the cleanup crews came, FEMA dropped off supplies, volunteers showed up with chainsaws and casseroles, and through it all, my mother sat quietly, calmly, like a stone in the middle of a river, unmoving, unshaken, watching the current flow around her. The house was declared uninhabitable, but she didn't cry. When the demolition team came to remove what was left, she stood on the sidewalk with her arms crossed and nodded like she was watching an old friend being laid to rest. That house had been her whole world. She had lived in it for 42 years. It had held birthdays, arguments, dinners, her husband's final breath, my first steps. But she let it go without protest. It wasn't until much later, after the dust had settled, after she'd moved in with me temporarily, that she finally said it. We were sitting in my kitchen one morning, the kind of morning that felt so normal, it almost betrayed the weight of everything we'd been through. She was drinking tea from a new mug, a gift from the Red Cross, and I was scrolling through my phone, reading updates about disaster relief grants. Then she said it. "I think the tornado saved me." I looked up, unsure I'd heard her correctly. "Saved you?" She nodded slowly. "I've been asleep for a long time, and I didn't even know it." And at first, I thought she was talking metaphorically about grief or about her life since Dad passed, but she kept going. "I spent years in that house waiting for something. I didn't even know what, just waiting for the past to come back, for time to rewind. I'd walk from room to room like I was living inside a memory. Do you know how many times I've replayed your father's last day? How many times I sat in the bedroom listening to the same clock tick on the same wall?" I didn't know what to say. I'd never heard her speak like this, never heard her admit to being lonely. Not in those words. She was always the strong one, the quiet force, but now she looked lighter, almost unburdened. "When the tornado hit," she continued, "everything I thought I needed was taken from me. The photos, the furniture, the history, and I thought I'd be broken. But I wasn't. I felt freed, like someone had finally opened a window in a room I didn't know was locked." I stared at her, stunned. This wasn't the narrative anyone expected. People kept calling her lucky to be alive. Survivors are supposed to feel grateful, shaken, changed. But she didn't just survive. She was reborn. She leaned forward and touched my hand. "You know what I realized in that hallway, when everything was shaking and I thought I might die? I wasn't afraid. Not the way I thought I'd be. I wasn't thinking about my possessions. I wasn't thinking about the house. I was thinking about you, about the sound of your voice, about how much I missed really living." The words sank in like stones. She told me she had dreams during those moments, strange dreams, flashes of her mother's garden, the scent of bread baking, a song my father used to hum off-key in the car. And when it all stopped, when she emerged and saw the sky clear again, she felt something shift inside her. She didn't want to go back to how things were. She didn't want to sit in that same chair and watch old shows and count the days until something happened. The storm had destroyed her house, but in doing so, it had forced her to let go of everything that had kept her tethered to a life that was quietly fading. And she didn't just say it to sound wise. She meant it. That week, she started volunteering at a shelter, said she wanted to help others who had lost what she had lost. She started gardening again, even though she'd said for years her back couldn't handle it. She laughed more. She stayed up later. She began talking about taking a trip, something she hadn't done in years. One night, I found her in the guest room at my place, painting. She used to be an artist, before me, before the responsibilities took over. And now she had a canvas propped on the windowsill, half filled with bold, sweeping strokes. The colors weren't soft pastels like I expected. They were deep reds, stormy blues, electric yellow. I asked her what it was. She said, "It's the tornado, but from inside." Oh, that's when I realized something profound. Sometimes the worst thing that ever happens to you doesn't destroy you. Sometimes it strips away everything false. Sometimes it shakes you awake. The tornado didn't just tear down our family home. It tore open something inside her that had been sealed shut for decades. And when she stepped out of that hallway, blinking into the light, she wasn't the same woman who went in. She was stronger, louder, more alive. And now, whenever someone asks about what she went through, about the trauma, the fear, the loss, she simply smiles and says, "It gave me my life back." If this story touched you, please hit the like button and share your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever faced a moment that changed everything? I'd love to hear your story. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a powerful story like this. Your support means the world and helps us bring more real, emotional stories to light every week. Stay safe and remember, showing up is the greatest act of love.